Okay, good evening to Union County Public Schools Board of Education public hearing. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order, beginning with approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We do have a couple of speakers signed up tonight. Policy 1-13, public hearing, states, the purpose of a public hearing is for the board to hear views expressed by citizens and to gather information pertinent to the issue or decisions that must be made or are under deliberation by the board. At the hearing, the board is not in session to answer questions, but is there solely to gather information and opinions. The following are proposed procedures pursuant to Policy 1-13. The purpose of this hearing is for the Board of Education to hear from the public on the proposed voting district revisions from the 2020 census. Comments on matters unrelated to the voting districts will not be heard tonight, and the speakers can complete the electronic form to participate in public comments at an upcoming regular board meeting. This hearing will conclude at 8 p.m. Individuals may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. Any person who is representing a group may address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes. If a speaker purports to represent a group, they should be authorized by that group and will be the only speaker allowed to represent that group. Prior to beginning, each speaker shall state their name and the group that they are representing, if that's the case. Speakers will be called upon in the order that they signed up. Any person not present when called will forfeit their time. Any board member needing clarification or additional information from the speaker may ask once recognized by the chair. The chair will entertain a motion to accept these procedures.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, our first speaker tonight is Lisa Walker.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
Lisa Walker. I'm not going to talk to you about masking.
Well, you can't.
I know.
Thank you. Nice to have you.
Thank you. I am with the Union County Democratic Party, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment on the maps. As you know, creating fair districts is extremely important and the foundation for a sound democracy. North Carolina has a sordid past on both sides of the aisle for gerrymandering. In 2017, the Supreme Court ruled against North Carolina's congressional maps, saying that they had surgical precision gerrymandering. And again, in 2019, the North Carolina stated that because of manipulation, it is carefully crafted maps and not the will of the voters that dictate the election outcomes. So unfortunately, this board became politicized in 2017 when it was decided to become partisan. So it is with those lens that I'm looking at the maps, just cautiously looking at the maps. We received the maps late last week, and to be honest, they're very complicated for somebody who's inexperienced in looking at maps, and it's hard to tell if it's good or bad maps because we don't understand the reasoning and the data behind the maps. What we do understand, and what I do when I'm looking at the maps, it looks like there are segments that are specifically cut out of precincts and pulled into other districts that seem unnatural and don't seem to not keep some communities of interest together. For example, precincts 30, 31, 7, 38, and 34 all have odd little segments that are cut out and pulled into another district. And they're different from how the maps that we're currently operating under. It's these little abnormalities that pull a little from this precinct and a little bit from that precinct that are confusing. And it would be beneficial if we could receive further clarification on the reasoning behind why this little section is pulled out and why that little section is pulled out. I am requesting a second session, ideally a Q&A with the consultant who created the maps. So these maps will be living with for the next 10 years. It would be really great if we could understand the data behind the maps. And if he or she could answer specific questions regarding these inconsistencies. Thank you.
Michelle, can you clarify if a speaker does not fill out all of the information, if they fill it out now, are they allowed to speak or?
I think that mission was all filled out. We were trying to do one sheet.
Okay,
He was online, the other person filled out.
okay. I had the information for Ms. Walker, but not the second one. Okay. Okay, it was just odd that Ms. Walker's information was filled out, so thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Weiss.
Thank you for allowing me to speak and for sharing the proposed maps. I also only received these at the end of last week, and they are pretty complicated. However, redistricting at its heart is a political act. And in North Carolina, that process and its products have been historically complicated by racial and partisan gerrymandering that draws districts to give one party power and disadvantage other parties. While it is true that we are increasingly sorting ourselves to live among those with whom we align politically, it is also equally true that there is partisan gerrymandering that occurs to keep power. It is unfortunate that we are in a moment of great distrust of our elected officials. Sadly, the decisions rendered by the majority of this Board of Education in regards to protecting the health and well-being of students, teachers, and staff during the COVID pandemic, as well as your failure in advocating for and controlling access to a free, appropriate public education for medically fragile and historically marginalized students, have only exacerbated that trust. As an active and independent voter, I'm concerned by the fact that this board chose to become partisan in 2017. What was the point of that decision if not to be positioned in 2020 to be in charge of deciding voting districts and to collude with the Republican majority in our state legislature to design districts that protect local power and support the concentration of power in the North Carolina General Assembly? Sorry, I'm nervous. I think we as voters understand even more clearly, given the spotlight shown by COVID on the systemic weaknesses of our institutions, that local control is the starting gate for advocacy and activism. We have studied how our schools have been chronically underfunded and how some UCPS staff, board members, and constituents like to boast about doing the most with the least. I'm here to say this is not a flex. That's a shame. There are very real needs that are going unmet by this district and its current representation and its means of holding on to power that has not only permitted the disparities, but has also contributed to increasing them. I have a variety of thoughts about this process and its outcomes and the impacts of new maps will have on our schools and their elected representatives. However, I mostly have questions that I'd like for you to answer before you vote. First, why is retaining the general current configuration of the districts and protecting incumbents a higher priority than keeping communities of interest in mind when drawing districts? How do these priorities serve the needs of students, families, and the community? Second, how does prioritizing keeping the status quo contribute to correcting current disparities or making matters worse? And third, based on population growth, when would it be necessary for Union County to consider adding districts? I respectfully request that the board allow us another week to review the maps and to have a true hearing where constituents may ask questions and receive answers that will clarify the impact the proposed maps will have on who and how we are represented. Thank you.
That concludes public comments. We will move to our board members if they have any questions or comments. Do we have the consultant online or are they online tonight or not?
They are, I can call them, but this is only for the.
Uh-huh.
public
We're
hearing.
not
It's
supposed
not
to
for-
do our
right,
comments, right?
Right.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.